Something that really stuck out to me when volunteering was just seeing how old all the people were. Some of them couldn't even talk or move on their own. I think seeing people at the end of their lives just kind of makes you appreciate life as a whole much more. There was an incident that really stuck out to me where a woman was with her husband in her wheelchair and she turned to him and she said, "I want to go home." And he looked at her and he said, "You are home." And she kind of just started to tear up. And I feel like there's something to be said about that because, they're so fortunate to be in these homes and to have people to take care of them. But at the same time, it is sad that they have to go here because a lot of them don't get visitors often. That's just why it's so important to have volunteers like us because we're young faces and we put a smile on their face. When we volunteered, we worked alongside our community partner, and the volunteer coordinator, Rebecca, was always present to assist and direct us with the different tasks and activities that we were completing with the residents. She also gave us lots of great information on the different types of activities that we were allowed to do with the residents so that we could have more of a collaborative effort. During my time at Gulf Coast Village, I learned how valuable life is and that you should live every day to the fullest and not sweat the small stuff.
Some foundational elements that were connected to our civic engagement project were serving, giving, and leading. I think that we serve the residents at Gulf Coast Village by helping them every single Sunday with whatever they needed help with, whether it be the same thing we did last week, like the balloon toss, or something different like art or puzzles. We were just there to help them whatever way they needed. With giving, we definitely gave a lot of time to the residents. We had to be very patient with them. Sometimes it was hard to get a response back from some of them, but you just have to smile and make sure that you know that you're doing your best to help their day. And with leading, sometimes the nurse or the assisted living caregiver would be away for a bit to go do something else or to take care of other residents. And so we would kind of have to accommodate with that and make sure that what we were doing was right. Sometimes it would involve pushing the wheelchairs away so that the residents didn't knock into each other. Some of them were getting fed up with that. We just had to make sure they were all comfortable, and sometimes it was a little difficult to know exactly what to do because we weren't given guidance, but I think we did a good job with leading in that sense. This type of skills that we utilized were definitely problem solving, critical thinking, and civic dialogue. We problem solved a lot because there's a lot of times where we weren't exactly sure what to do if our supervisor wasn't there to make sure that we were doing everything right. So we definitely had to think about that and also think about ideas to interact with the residents and make sure that they were happy and content with what we were doing. With critical thinking, we had to make sure that in scenarios where we weren't sure if they were getting the right treatment or not, we had to make sure that they were given the right treatment and that we were doing the best to make sure that their living conditions were good and healthy. And with civic dialogue, we had to communicate with each other and also with the residents to make sure that they were doing well and that we were providing them with the best care that we could, even if sometimes we didn't get a response. Some examples that our course offered that we kind of utilized and correlated with our own project were in week 4, when we went over the video of technology and social isolation. I think some of the residents were probably isolated, and even though they aren't familiar with technology and aren't familiar with that time because they didn't grow up in it, I think they're isolated in a sense that they can't communicate with each other. They have a hard time doing it, and sometimes it would get a little boring at the resident home, and sometimes it would seem like there wasn't much to do, but we had to make sure that we didn't pull out our phones and we didn't start texting, that we were present and we were there and we were taking care of the residents. Another example in week 4 was the art of One World, and it was the painting that all the children did. We connected with the residents a lot through art. We did coloring books, and I noticed a lot of the residents seemed to really flourish when we did that. They also really enjoyed listening to music and singing along. And there was one lady that she didn't know her name even, but she knew all the lyrics to a bunch of different songs, and that was really cool to see that she remembered all the lyrics even though she didn't necessarily remember her name. It's really cool to see how art and music can connect people and trigger memory.
Working with the elderly really required a lot of critical thinking, association, and problem solving. I mean, one may think that when you go to a retirement home or you associate with the elderly that it's very straightforward. Yet that's not always the case. Our group, when we went to the Gulf Coast Village, we found ourselves immersed in their world. And although many of them had a lot of difficulty with communication, understanding, and just even knowing what's going on with the outside world, we took it upon ourselves to invest in their world, so to say, and sit down and spend time with them. In terms of critical thinking, it was important because we needed to really realize and put ourselves in their shoes and from our perspective see how they felt. So therefore, if they were, let's say that we were all playing a game and some didn't want to respond, we needed to figure out how to get them to interact with us, to respond with us. I mean, we felt that was important, and we tried our best to leave nobody out, whether they have some disease or they didn't want to play, or if they didn't want to engage with us. And that really ties in the problem solving too, because if they were having an issue, we worked as a group to mend that issue and make them feel as comfortable as possible. And we took it upon ourselves to really invest in their world. And we think that it really paid off for that. I mean, we got laughs and smiles out of them. We could even have some simple dialogue. I mean, to the best of their abilities, they communicated with us to the best they could. And we felt that we really did make a lasting impression. And I'm sure that the staff had saw us interact with them, and they would probably be more open. Oh no, they would actually definitely be more open to having more FGCU students come in the future and interact with their patients. And I mean, this strongly relates to Chapter 4 with association. I mean, we had to associate with them on their level. And that's why I felt that our time there led us all to be, I mean, I'm even speaking for myself, grow like in a moral and strong way, because I had never witnessed anything like that in my life. And it broke my heart, but at the same time, it made me stronger seeing how we could make a difference and how short, even though our short time there really reciprocated. I mean, there were a few residents that had actually remembered me by name a few weeks later. So therefore, I felt that we had really made a difference there.
From this project, we learned the importance of human interaction and how it can impact people in different ways. We also learned how to communicate effectively with the elderly community. This project impacted us in many ways. First, we realized how hard it is for people when they can't take care of themselves. There are many options to choose from when being in this situation, but we all agree that living in an assisted living home is probably the best option. Most of us were really nervous to start our volunteering and shocked when we first started, but over time, we grew to appreciate and bond with the residents at Gulf Coast Village. We really want to stress the fact that everyone should appreciate the life that they have and don't take it for granted. It was a very rewarding experience, but it was still very sad to see all of the issues and struggles that the residents have in their daily lives. When we volunteered, we also learned about love. There were many times that we went to volunteer and a resident's spouse would be there visiting. Most of the residents are not able to communicate or talk back to everyone, so it was very sad to see, but it is nice to see that the spouse or loved ones are still there supporting them and giving them love when they might not be able to reciprocate it. When volunteering, not a lot of residents are responsive, but the few that are did thank us and always smiled when we were there. Even though they can't get up or shake our hands or show their appreciation, we could tell how happy they were when we volunteered with them just by their smiles and excitement in their faces.